name is Sarah, and I live in a small town called Maplewood. After graduating from college, I was on the hunt for a job, and it wasn't easy. This town isn't exactly bustling with opportunities, but I finally landed a gig at a jewelry shop in a fancy mall. The mall was one of those nice places where rich people shopped, and it had all these big name stores like Gucci and Tiffany's. It was the kind of place where you might see a celebrity if you were lucky. The jewelry shop was small but packed with expensive stuff, from diamonds to gold necklaces. I heard the previous shopkeeper was always late, which is why he got fired. Mr. Thompson, the owner, was a decent guy but pretty serious about work. He expected everything to run smoothly. Unfortunately, he was on vacation when I started, which meant I was the only one there. I felt a bit overwhelmed, but I thought I could handle it. The first day was slow. Not many customers came in, which was kind of nice because it gave me a chance to get used to everything. I was cleaning the glass cases and organizing the rings when I finally heard the little bell above the door jingle. I looked up and saw a couple walk in. They looked to be in their mid-30s, dressed nicely, and seemed friendly enough. "Hey there," I said, forcing a smile. "How can I help you today?" They looked around, admiring the jewelry. I was just about to tell them I was closing up soon when the guy stepped forward. "We're actually looking for a diamond," he said, his eyes darting around the shop. I hesitated for a moment. "That's great, but I'm about to close," I said, glancing at the clock. It was already 6:45 p.m. "If you want, you can come back tomorrow," the woman interjected, her voice soft but urgent. "Please, it's our 10th anniversary, and we really need to get something special. We've been saving for this." The guy nodded, looking desperate. "It's really important to us. Just a few more minutes, please." Something about their eagerness made me hesitate. I felt bad for them, so I decided to show them the diamonds. I pulled out a few rings, explaining the different cuts and clarity. Their eyes sparkled with excitement, and I could see they were genuinely interested. Then, they both zeroed in on one huge diamond ring, and I could see why. It was stunning, big, and shiny, and it looked like something out of a movie. The guy was practically drooling over it. "This one is perfect," he said, his face lit up with joy. I tried to hold back my apprehension. "It's really expensive," I said, but they were so eager. The guy insisted it was what they wanted, and the woman kept nodding, her eyes wide. After a moment of hesitation, I rang up the sale, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. But as I was about to hand over the ring, the woman suddenly said, "Wait, can we see another one? Just to compare?" I felt a small knot in my stomach, but I nodded and showed them another ring. As I handed it to her, I noticed that the woman quickly slipped the first diamond ring into her bag. I didn't see it, but something felt off. "Hey, can I get the first one back?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "I want to show you something else." The guy looked at me, his expression changing. "Oh, we might have dropped it. Can you check the floor?" My heart began racing. "What do you mean, dropped it?" I asked, confused. "Yeah, we're pretty sure we dropped it when you handed us this one," the woman said, her voice calm. But I could see a flicker of something in her eyes. I bent down to look around the floor, my mind racing. I felt stupid for not catching on sooner. Suddenly, I heard the sound of footsteps moving toward the door. Wait, I shouted, realizing they were trying to make a run for it. But they were already out of my sight, sprinting toward the entrance. I panicked and pressed the emergency button under the counter, which locked the doors. I could hear the locks clicking into place, but I wasn't sure if it would be enough. My heart was pounding. I dashed to the back of the shop, where there was a small room that acted as a safe. I locked myself inside and grabbed my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. "I need help." They're thieves at the jewelry shop. The operator on the other end tried to keep me calm, but I was freaking out. I could hear the couple banging on the door, yelling for me to let them out. "Come on, it's just a misunderstanding," they shouted. I held my breath, waiting for the police to arrive. The banging continued, and I could feel my heart racing. I was terrified they would break in. I glanced at the safe, thinking about what I would do if they got in. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard sirens outside. The banging stopped, and I felt a rush of relief. The police burst in, and I could hear them shouting. "Where are they?" one officer called out. I opened the door to the safe and came out, pointing to the front of the shop. "They were just here. They tried to steal a diamond." The officers rushed out, and I could hear them shouting for the couple to stop. I held my breath, praying they would catch them. It felt like a movie as I waited, but soon enough, I heard them shouting, "We got them!" They dragged the couple back into the shop, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I was just lucky enough to catch them. They tried to play it cool, but the police weren't having it. I couldn't believe how close I had come to letting those thieves walk away with a diamond. It was a scary first day, but somehow I made it through. This was a wild ride for me, and I was just glad I was safe. That close call taught me to always be on my toes, especially when it came to working in a place like that. It was my first day working for this plumbing company. I was called in for my first job to this house out of town. The plumbing company had 5 employees, and the owner would choose who does what job. I don't see it as a coincidence that I was sent to some undesirable job far away in a shitty area for my first job. The call was for a leaky pipe under the sink, which is typically the easiest, most basic job. I pulled up to the house, and it was an absolutely disgusting looking house, completely run down, as if no one had lived there for years. I went up to the house and knocked until a middle-aged man opened the door. I didn't like his aura from the start. He had this unflattering, disproportionately wide smile that made his entire face appear off-putting. His voice was also really soft and high-pitched, not the voice I was expecting. He welcomed me inside the house, and I realized there wasn't a single piece of furniture in the house. "Just moved in," he replied when I asked. He brought me to the kitchen, and the first thing I did was set my stuff down on the counter, then open the cabinets under the sink. I slid myself under the sink and started to examine the pipe, specifically looking at the P-trap and the lock nuts. I noticed the man was standing directly over me, his legs spread wide so that I was sandwiched between both of his feet. It was extremely uncomfortable. I asked him politely to give me some space, and he backed up a bit, but not enough. I realized I didn't see any water leaking at all, so I got out from under the sink and tried running the water, but no water came out of the faucet. I looked at the weird man and asked why the water wasn't running. He said he must have shut off the main water valve without realizing it. When I say I stood there speechless for a few seconds, I'm not exaggerating. I asked him bluntly, "How do you do something like that by mistake?" He smiled and shrugged his shoulders. I asked him to turn the water valve back on, and he turned and said he'd be right back. But then I heard footsteps walking upstairs. I'd never in my life heard of a water valve being upstairs in any house. I knew something was off with this guy and the situation, everything from the condition of this house to his mannerisms, and then I started hearing multiple sets of footsteps from upstairs coming down the steps quickly. In a split second, I decided I was out of there. I grabbed my stuff and quickly walked out to the front door in my van. I'm a pretty large and loud dude, so I'm not really intimidated very easily by people in a physical way. But there was something about that situation and that guy that told me that something was about to go down. I looked at the house for a second, and then I drove away. I called my boss, letting him know it was just some kind of prank, because that just sounded better than me saying I was scared of that guy. I did a few minutes worth of investigating and found out that that was just a vacant, abandoned house. I got the number that made the call for the alleged leaky pipe from my boss, and it turned out to be a voiceover IP number, not even a real number. I reported this shady encounter with the local police department just so that they would be aware of it and maybe close off that house. I needed this job bad. Rent was due. My car was one repair away from being a lost cause, and the last place I worked at laid off half the staff. So when I got hired at this small warehouse on the edge of town, I didn't ask too many questions. Big mistake. The place was called Grayson Storage and Logistics. Looked normal enough from the outside. Just a big gray building with a few trucks parked in the lot. The guy who hired me, Rick, seemed friendly. A little too friendly. Kept smiling with all his teeth, like he was trying to sell me something. But hey, a paycheck's a paycheck. First red flag, the paperwork, or lack of it. Rick handed me a single sheet to sign. No tax forms, no emergency contacts, nothing. Just my name and a scribbled line about confidentiality. When I asked about it, he just chuckled and said, "We like to keep things simple here." I should have walked out right then, but I didn't. My shift started at 10 p.m. Night crew. Rick said it was just inventory, moving boxes, easy shit. When I pulled into the lot, it was dead quiet. No other cars. No lights except one flickering bulb above the employee entrance. Inside, the air smelled like dust and something else chemical, almost like bleach. The warehouse was huge, rows of metal shelves disappearing into the dark. No music, no chatter, just the hum of a single forklift running somewhere deep in the building. That's when I met my trainer. Dude's name was Carl, tall, wiry, with these sunken eyes that never blinked enough. He didn't shake my hand, just stared at me for a long second before saying, "Follow me." We walked past stacks of unmarked boxes, some wrapped in thick plastic. I caught a glimpse of one that had split open inside were these weird metal parts, like something medical or industrial. Carl saw me looking and quickly shoved the flaps closed. "Don't worry about that," he muttered. "Just stick to the labels." The labels, that was the next weird thing. Every box had a code, but not like normal warehouse shit. No numbers, just letters. AX, BQ, DZ, and some of them. They were warm to the touch. Like something inside was generating heat. I asked Carl what was in them. He stopped walking, turned to me real slow. Then he said, "You don't want to know." By 2 a.m., my skin was crawling. The whole place felt wrong. The other guys on shift 3 of them never talked. Just moved boxes in silence, glancing at me like I was a problem. Then I heard the scream. It came from the far end of the warehouse and muffled, but unmistakable. A man's voice, raw with pain. I froze. Carl grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in. "Don't," he hissed. "Just keep working." But I couldn't. I waited until Carl was distracted, then I slipped away. Followed the sound. Past the shelves, deeper into the dark until I found a door. Metal, heavy, with a keypad. And from behind it, another scream. Then a wet, choking sound. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely pull out my phone. No signal, of course. That's when I noticed the blood. A thin trail of it leading from under the door to a drain in the floor. Fresh. I ran. Didn't grab my shit. Didn't say a word. Just bolted for the exit, my heart slamming against my ribs. Behind me, I heard Carl shouting, then the sound of the forklift starting up coming toward me. I made it to my car, keys in, engine roaring, tires screeching as I peeled out of that godforsaken lot. I never went back. Never answered their calls. A week later, I drove past the place just to see. It was empty. No trucks, no lights. Just a for-lease sign swinging in the wind. I still don't know what the hell was in those boxes. and I don't want to know. This is something that happened this past Friday while I was babysitting. For a little bit of context, I'm 21F, a college student, and have been babysitting since I was 14. I'm not an expert on literally anything. However, over the years, I have learned caution and resilience. At age 15, I took babysitting classes at our youth center as well as a female self-defense course. So I babysit at least once a month for this one family. I like them because they pay me more than my usual hourly rate. They have a big house with internet that I can use to do homework. And the two kids are surprisingly well behaved and compliant. So the two parents have like a monthly ritual of going out around 5 p.m. and returning a little after 2 a.m. I'm always offered to sleep in the guest bedroom and stay until morning. I usually just stay awake and abuse their satellite TV and then leave when they come back. The house is in a nice neighborhood without a whole lot of neighbors. Very quiet. Also, their house is armed with an alarm system that I have the code to and can arm and disarm it through my phone. That'll be relevant in a little while. So, I always take them for pizza at this place that has like an arcade. I do this so that they tire themselves out and go to bed early. Plus, the little girl that I babysit is also on a mission to win a family of stuffed animals from the prize store. So, I'd be the world's worst babysitter if I didn't guide her in that pursuit. If anyone's maybe wondering for whatever reason, after Friday night, she only needs the daddy stuffed animal before her collection is complete. Go girl. Anywho, I'm rambling. I was sitting at a table and watching them play in a ball pit while also texting on my phone. This couple came over and sat at the same table as me. It was a long table with parents scattered here and there, so this wasn't alarming. The couple looked normal enough. Both were probably in their mid-20s, possibly a little older. They talked to each other, but then the guy asked me, "Are you the one babysitting Dr. So-and-so's kids?" So, the parents of these children are both doctors, and the specific region that we live in, this would be common enough information, but I still chose to answer their question with an irrelevant statement. I wonder what they used to make the pizza here. Yeah, I know. I'm a master of deception. I deserve an Oscar for my performance. However, they seemed to see right through my clever ruse. They started making weird comments. They talked about the kid's parents. They commented on the daughter and how they wondered if she would look as pretty as their mom. Okay, my dudes. I don't know if that was intended to be creepy, but I'm just going to be safe and pretend that it was. Then the woman says to me, and I quote, "Do they really let you dress like that while watching their kids?" She motioned with her eyes towards my t-shirt, which was admittedly a little tight, though aside from a little bit of a bosom crack, not revealing. I have a thin frame and a large chest. It's 90 degrees in my region of the US right now, so it's not like I can wear a hoodie, and my tits have a Crips and Bloods type relationship with any kind of shirt that has buttons. I saw that as my cue to go and get the kiddos and bring them to get their prizes so that we could bounce. After some very thought-provoking, philosophical debating, they both got their prizes and we headed back over to the house. So fast forward a few hours, both kids were bathed and put to sleep. I delivered a heartwarming rendition of Goodnight Moon and read a very spooky chapter of The Werewolf of Fever Swamp and tucked them into dreamland. It was around 9 p.m. I was caught up on homework and was just watching TV when I heard some movement on the porch. I didn't think much of it at first, but the doorknob started rattling violently. I initially started moving towards the front door to see who it was, but miraculously, I remembered that it was late at night, I was home alone with two kids, and I very much wanted to live. I turned around to grab my purse, which is where I keep my taser. As I'm moving, the back door starts rattling as well and was accompanied by some banging noises. That's when I remembered that I hadn't enabled the alarm system after returning. Now, if this was a horror movie scenario, of course, the alarm wouldn't have worked and the intruders would have made their way inside. I hate to disappoint if you were expecting something more exciting, but I enabled it again quite easily with no incident. I ran upstairs and grabbed the two kids. I put them in their parents' room, in the walk-in closet. I still hate that I scared them. When I gathered them up, I gave no context as to what was going on. I didn't want to tell them that someone was trying to break into the house, but in the process, the fear of not knowing seemed to be worse. I instructed them to stay in there and stay quiet, and only to open the door if they hear me talking to them. I then locked the bedroom door, which is the only door on the upstairs floor that locks. I sat there with my taser out and hit the panic button on the phone app. Several minutes went by, then I got the notification through the app that the alarm system was disabled. I planned on calling 911 even though the panic button already took care of that. But I found it more beneficial to arm it back. Then it disarmed again, so I armed it again. Then it disarmed once again, so I armed it once again. By this time, I could hear what sounded like 2 sets of footsteps walking up the stairs. Good job, girl. You locked yourself inside with 2 potential assailants. I was holding it together for the sake of the kids, but not too deep inside. I was scared to death. When I heard the footsteps get near the door and saw the knob twisting, I took a deep breath and pulled the trigger on my taser, just to let them know that I was armed, though it realistically wouldn't do much good. I informed them through the door that the alarm was triggered and police were on their way. Thankfully, I was greeted by a familiar voice. "Ema, it's Dr. Mike, you're safe." I opened the door and ran into their arms and started sobbing. I hadn't realized truly until it was over just how scared I really was. The kids came out without me giving them the okay, but their parents were there, so I'll let it slide. When I enabled the alarm on my phone, they both got the notification from the place they were at. With the app, you have the option to view the porch cameras as well. When they got the notification that the panic button was activated, they saw through the camera that there were people on each side of the house. 1 man, 1 woman. When the alarm kept disarming, that was them trying to get into the house. Police report was filed by them, and I gave a statement mentioning the 2 weirdos I met earlier that day, even though there was really no evidence that would directly point to them. Camera footage didn't give any positive face IDs either. So yeah, I was scared. I'm getting over it now. I'm just grateful that the couple that I was babysitting for were close enough to make it to me. I hate to say it, but I find the police response time to be terrible. I'm currently back in my own apartment an hour away. I checked in once to see how the kids were doing, and they're holding up fine. I'm just glad they had proper protection in their home, and that this didn't end up to be any worse.